Welcome back to the channel. I'm really glad you're here for this one, because today's topic isn't really going to sit well with some people. And that's okay because I get it. But this isn't about encouraging anyone to go destroy a happy relationship or slide into someone's situation uninvited. That's not what this is. But let's be honest, this scenario exists. It happens constantly. Men develop feelings for women who are already taken, and nobody ever actually talks about it in a way that's grounded and real. So today, that's exactly what happens here. And actually, if you're already in a relationship, this video might be the most useful thing you watch this week. Because understanding how this dynamic works, what men do, what signals get misread, and what actually creates emotional vulnerability in a relationship, that's information that protects you. Knowledge isn't the threat. Ignorance is. For the men watching who are in this situation right now, this is a judgment-free breakdown. Not a strategy guide for wrecking someone's relationship, but an honest psychological look at what's actually going on, what the real options are, and what a man who actually respects himself does when he wants someone he can't have. No sugarcoating, just the truth about a situation most men have been in at least once, and almost nobody handled perfectly the first time. There's a reason the boyfriend detail doesn't immediately kill the attraction for a lot of men. And it's not because they're bad people or have zero respect for boundaries. It's because the human brain has a deeply wired response to unavailability that operates completely independently of logic or ethics. Understanding this doesn't excuse ignoring it, but it does explain why the feeling shows up in the first place. Scarcity bias is the psychological principle at work here. The brain consistently assigns higher value to things that are less accessible. This isn't unique to attraction. It shows up in economics, consumer behavior, social dynamics, and decision-making across every area of human life. A product with low stock feels more valuable. An opinion that gets pushback feels more worth defending. And a woman who is already claimed by someone else feels to a part of the male brain more worth pursuing. Not because she changed, but because the obstacle made her feel rarer. Reactance theory adds another layer. Psychologist Jack Braw identified that when people feel their freedom to have something is being restricted, their desire for that thing actually increases. Tell a man he can't have something, and a specific part of his psychology will immediately want to test that boundary. It's not maturity, it's instinct. And instinct doesn't check in with values before it shows up. Dopamine plays its part too, the uncertainty of an unavailable situation. Will she stay? Will something change? Does she feel something? Creates exactly the kind of variable reward cycle that keeps the brain hooked. It's the same mechanism behind checking a phone compulsively. The maybe is more neurologically stimulating than a guaranteed yes. None of this means a man is supposed to act on it, but pretending the feeling isn't psychologically real, or that only a certain kind of man experiences it, is just dishonest. The feeling is human. What separates men is what they choose to do with it once they understand where it's actually coming from. Now, what does "she has a boyfriend" actually mean? The moment a man finds out the woman he's interested in has a boyfriend, his brain immediately starts doing something it has absolutely no business doing: building a narrative. He starts filling in blanks he has zero actual information about. The boyfriend is probably wrong for her. They're probably not that serious. She probably isn't even happy. And just like that, a completely fictional story gets constructed to make the pursuit feel more justified than it actually is. This is where an honest reality check becomes necessary, because the scenarios are genuinely different, and most men treat them as identical. There are women who are in genuinely happy, solid relationships and are simply friendly, warm people by nature. Their eye contact, their laugh, their openness in conversation, None of it is a signal, it's just who they are. The man who reads romantic availability into basic human warmth is not picking up on something real. He's projecting onto a situation that has no space for him. And the sooner he recognizes that, the less time he wastes chasing something that was never actually there. Then there are women in genuinely unhappy relationships, emotionally disconnected, unfulfilled, already halfway out the door in their heads, even if they haven't physically left yet. These situations are real, and they're more common than people admit. But even here, the important detail is this. Her relationship status is her responsibility to resolve, not a problem a man swoops in to solve for her. A woman who wants out will get out. A man positioning himself as the reason she leaves is building something on a foundation that was already unstable before he arrived. The most dangerous scenario is the middle ground. A woman who is neither fully happy nor fully checked out, who enjoys the attention of another man as an emotional outlet without any real intention of disrupting her relationship. Men get stuck here the longest, mistaking emotional intimacy for romantic availability and investing months, sometimes years, into a situation that was never actually moving anywhere. Knowing which scenario is actually in play requires honesty that most men actively avoid, because the truth is less exciting than the narrative. The friend zone trap, when being there for her, becomes a strategy. There is a specific type of male patience that masquerades as genuine friendship, but is actually just a long-term romantic strategy with terrible odds and zero transparency. And the man running this play almost never admits it. Not to her, and often not even to himself. He's just being a good friend. He's not putting pressure on her. He's letting things develop naturally. What he's actually doing is waiting, and quietly resenting every day she doesn't notice what's right in front of her. This is the friend zone in its most honest form. Not a place a woman puts a man, but a place a man builds for himself by refusing to be direct about his intentions while continuing to show up with the emotional investment of someone who is very much romantically interested. Women are not oblivious to this dynamic. That's the part men consistently get wrong. She knows. She might not address it directly, but she knows there's an agenda underneath the friendship. And rather than making her feel guilty, it usually makes her feel slightly uncomfortable. Because there's an imbalance in the relationship that was never openly agreed to. He's operating on terms she never signed off on. The psychological concept here is called misattribution of investment. The more time and emotional energy a man puts into a situation, the more his brain inflates its potential value to justify the investment. Economists call this the sunk cost fallacy. He's not still around because the situation is genuinely promising. He's still around because leaving would mean admitting that all that time and energy went nowhere. So he stays and reframes and waits some more. The brutal truth about the nice guy waiting strategy is that even in the rare cases where it technically works, where the relationship ends and he's right there, what follows is rarely the romance he imagined. She didn't choose him out of genuine attraction. She chose familiarity during a vulnerable moment. That's a completely different thing, and it tends to show up in the relationship sooner or later, in ways neither of them fully expected. What a high-value man actually does. Everything covered so far, the scarcity bias, the fictional narratives, the friend zone waiting game. All of it has one thing in common. It positions a man as someone reacting to circumstances rather than someone operating from a clear sense of his own worth. And that distinction is everything, because how a man handles this specific situation reveals more about his actual confidence level than almost anything else. A high-value man, when he realizes he's genuinely interested in a woman who is already in a relationship, does something that feels almost radical given everything society has normalized around this topic. He tells the truth, and then he respects the answer. Not in a dramatic confession under the stars way, but if there's a genuine connection and the situation warrants honesty, he acknowledges his interest simply and without pressure. Something clean, something direct, something that puts the information on the table without making her feel cornered or obligated. And then, critically, he doesn't hover waiting for circumstances to change. He actually moves on, not as a tactic, not as a strategic retreat designed to make her miss him. He moves on because his time and emotional energy are genuinely valuable to him. And parking them indefinitely in a situation with no real opening is something his self-respect won't allow. This is the behavior that women consistently describe as attractive after the fact. Not the man who waited 2 years in the shadows. Not the man who tried to engineer her dissatisfaction with her relationship. The man who was honest, who respected himself enough to not beg for a spot in a situation that had no room for him, and who walked away with his dignity completely intact. There's also an ethical dimension here that's worth naming directly. We actively trying to dismantle someone else's relationship, feeding her doubts, positioning himself as the better option, making her emotionally dependent on conversations with him, is a strategy that says something very specific about a man's character. And whatever he wins using those methods, he'll spend a long time managing the consequences of how he got it. Self-respect in this situation isn't the consolation prize. It's the whole point. Now, let me tell you how to read the real signals to know if she's actually interested. This part requires a specific kind of honesty because it lives in genuinely complicated territory. Not every woman in a relationship who shows warmth toward another man is sending signals, but some are, and the difference between the two is readable. If a man is being honest with himself rather than seeing what he wants to see, the first and most important distinction is the difference between friendly and selective. A woman who is warm, engaging, and open with everyone in a room is just a sociable person. A woman who reserves a specific, different quality of attention exclusively for one man. Longer conversations, more personal topics, unnecessary check-ins, remembering small details he mentioned once in passing. That selectivity means something. It's not proof of romantic availability, but it's worth paying attention to. Consistent initiation is a real signal. When a woman in a relationship is repeatedly the one starting conversations with a specific man, finding reasons to be around him, or creating opportunities for one-on-one interaction that don't naturally exist, she's doing something intentional, even if she hasn't consciously admitted it to herself yet. People in genuinely fulfilled relationships don't consistently seek emotional intimacy outside of them without a reason. Transparency about relationship problems is another one. There's a difference between casually mentioning a disagreement and repeatedly, in detail, narrating the emotional gaps in her relationship to a man she knows is interested. The second one is not venting. It's an open door being held open consistently to see if he'll walk through it. Physical signals matter too, and they're distinct from general friendliness. Unnecessary physical contact. Holding eye contact longer than the conversation requires. Finding excuses for proximity. These are deliberate, even when they're subconscious. The critical thing to remember is that signals of interest from a woman in a relationship are not the same as signals of availability. She can be genuinely attracted and have zero intention of acting on it. Reading interest correctly means acknowledging both realities simultaneously and not fast-forwarding to a conclusion that conveniently matches what he was hoping for. The Stoic perspective. Let me dwell a little on detachment, abundance, and moving like a man with options. Stoicism has a specific kind of usefulness in situations where emotions are loudest and clarity is hardest to access. And this situation qualifies on both counts. A man who is fixated on a woman in a relationship is by definition operating from scarcity. His entire emotional energy is concentrated on a single point that is currently unavailable to him. And scarcity thinking, regardless of how justified it feels, always produces the same result: desperation dressed up as devotion. Marcus Aurelius wrote consistently about the danger of allowing external circumstances to determine internal states. Applied here, it means this: a woman's relationship status is an external circumstance. It is completely outside a man's control. And the Stoic position is clear on what to do with things outside of control. Acknowledge them, accept them, and redirect energy toward what is actually within reach. This isn't emotional suppression, it's emotional precision. There's a meaningful difference between a man who genuinely processes the situation and moves forward with clarity, and a man who buries the feeling, pretends he's fine, and shows up 6 months later having made zero actual progress. Stoicism requires honest confrontation of reality, not avoidance of it. The abundance mindset that Stoicism cultivates is the most practical tool available in this specific situation. A man who genuinely believes that this one woman is his only viable option for connection, attraction, or companionship is a man who has dramatically underestimated both himself and the world around him. That belief, that scarcity, is what keeps men stuck in waiting rooms of relationships that were never going to open their doors. Epictetus was direct about attachment to outcomes that depend on other people's choices. Want something that requires another person's free decision to materialize? That want will own you until you release it. The man who moves on, actually moves on, invests in himself, expands his social world, builds something worth being attracted to, doesn't just get over the situation. He becomes someone genuinely better positioned for the next one. Detachment here isn't giving up. It's choosing himself loudly enough that the right woman eventually notices. This situation is one of the most emotionally complicated ones a man can find himself in, and the fact that it's rarely discussed honestly makes it harder to navigate than it needs to be. But the through line across everything covered today is actually simple. A man who knows his worth doesn't wait in shadows, doesn't engineer situations, and doesn't build his emotional world around someone who is already spoken for. The psychology is real, the feelings are valid, and the response that serves a man best, honesty, self-respect, genuine detachment, and forward movement, is always available regardless of what she decides. For the men already in relationships watching this, now you understand the dynamics at play when outside interest enters the picture. Protect your connection by staying present, emotionally available, and genuinely attentive. The vulnerabilities this video described don't appear out of nowhere. They grow in gaps. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been in this situation? What did you do? And looking back, would you handle it differently? Every comment gets a personal response because real conversations matter more than content metrics here. If this video gave you something useful, share it with someone who needs it right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do that immediately.